On a raw Nebraska morning in March of 1985, the gravel road
50,000? Do I hear
outside Broken Bow
60,000?
looked more like a
Are
funeral
you all
line
done
than
at
an
60?
auction.
I have
Pickup trucks sat
60,000.
bumper to bumper along the ditch, men in seed caps stamped their boots against the cold. Women stood near the porch with their hands folded inside their coat sleeves. And at the center of it all was a 312-acre family farm the bank was ready to take. The bank had a reserve price. If the bidding failed to reach that number, the farm would not go home with a neighbor. It would go back onto the bank's books, waiting for a larger operator or an investor with cleaner credit. Everyone there knew that. Everyone there thought the ending had already been written. Then, just after 9 o'clock, an old green pickup rolled slowly up the lane. An 18-year-old farm girl stepped out wearing a faded chore coat, mud on her boots, and an envelope tucked flat against her ribs. Most people barely looked at her. A few assumed she had come to buy a socket set, maybe a stock tank, maybe a used gate if the price stayed low. Nobody thought she had come for the land. But before that auction was over, Clara Jensen would raise her hand in front of bankers, landmen, and operators twice her age. And the crowd would go so still, even the auctioneer would forget his rhythm. Because Clara was not there to watch a farm disappear, she was there to make sure it stayed. The place belonged to Ray and Elsie Whitcomb. The Whitcomb farm was not large by Nebraska standards. It was a homestead quarter, another patch of rented pasture, a creek-bottom field that flooded in wet years, and a line of cottonwoods Ray's father had planted to stop the north wind from taking the topsoil. But, to the Whitcombs, it was not a parcel, it was a record. There were notches on the barn door where Ray had measured his sons every August. There was a cracked kitchen window Elsie refused to replace because her oldest boy had broken it with a baseball in 1969. There was a low hill behind the machine shed where 4 generations of the family had watched storms build in the west and tried to guess whether the corn would get rain before the leaves curled. That is what a farm can become when the same family works it long enough. Not an asset, a memory with fence posts. But the early 1980s did not care about memory. For years, farmers have been told to grow. Land values were climbing, exports looked strong, local banks were lending with confidence. Equipment dealers said the new machines would pay for themselves and a good borrower with decent collateral could walk out with money that would have been unthinkable a decade earlier. Ray Whitcomb did what many careful farmers did. He borrowed to install a used irrigation pivot. He borrowed to buy 80 acres from a retiring neighbor. He traded up for a combine that could finish harvest before a storm caught the Milo standing. None of those choices looked reckless at the time. They looked necessary. Then the ground shifted. Interest rates climbed into double digits. Crop prices softened. A strong dollar hurt exports. Land values, once treated like a permanent ladder, started dropping under the men who had borrowed against them. A farm that looked secure on paper in 1979 could look dangerous by 1983. And when the paper turned dangerous, the banks turned cold. Ray and Elsie cut everything they could cut. They patched belts instead of replacing them. They sold a second tractor. Elsie took in mending from town. Ray picked up custom hay work even when his own fields needed him. Still, the interest kept walking across the table every month like it owned the place. By late 1984, the bank sent the letter. The Whitcomb farm would be sold at public auction the following March. Clara Jensen lived 2 miles east, on a smaller operation that never had extra money and never pretended to. Her father ran cattle, corn, and whatever repair work kept diesel in the tank. Her mother kept the books in pencil because pencil could be erased when the numbers changed. And the numbers always changed. Clara grew up with the work nobody wrote songs about. Bottle calves at 2 in the morning. Frozen hydrants. Fence wire snapping back hard enough to split a knuckle. A baler that only worked after someone kicked the right panel and prayed over the twine. When Clara was 12, her father gave her 2 orphan calves and told her the first lesson of farming. Don't spend the calf before it is born. She took that sentence seriously. She raised those calves, sold them, bought 3 more, and put the money away. Every summer, she worked for neighbors, stacking hay, scraping lots, greasing equipment, and welding cracks in old machinery that should have been retired twice. By 17, Clara owned a small string of cows, a savings account, and a reputation for showing up before she was asked. But she also carried something else. 2 years earlier, she had watched her uncle lose his place in a foreclosure sale. She remembered the sound of machinery selling one piece at a time. She remembered grown men pretending not to wipe their eyes. She remembered her aunt standing in the doorway of a house that suddenly belonged to someone else. That day taught Clara a truth no banker had to explain. When a farm is sold out from under a family, the loss is not only financial. It changes where every memory is allowed to live. So, when the Whitcomb auction notice appeared on the bulletin board at the feed store, Clara read it twice. Then she did something nobody in town knew about. She took her savings books, cattle records, and every receipt she had kept in a shoebox to a tiny credit union 30 miles away. She showed them the cows she owned, the calves already contracted, and the custom work she had lined up for spring. She did not ask for sympathy. She asked for numbers. The loan officer nearly laughed until he saw the records. Clara had written down everything: feed costs, sale weights, repair wages, hay checks, fuel bought, fuel saved, cows bred, calves sold. 6 years of small money had become something solid. Not enough to impress a land investor, enough to make one cautious lender listen. By the morning of the auction, Clara had a cashier's check for the deposit, a signed financing letter for the balance, if she won under the limit, and a plan folded into the same envelope. Her parents knew she had been saving, they did not know what she intended to do with it. The auction began with the equipment: a disc sold first, then a grain wagon, then Ray's old tractor, the one with the cracked vinyl seat and the steering wheel polished smooth by 20 years of harvest. Every sale sounded final. Elsie Whitcomb stood near the porch steps with her jaw tight and her hands tucked under her arms. Ray stood beside the machine shed, looking less like a man watching an auction and more like a man trying to memorize the shape of his own life before it was moved away. By noon, the small tools were gone. By 1, the machinery row had thinned, then the auctioneer climbed onto the flatbed trailer and announced the land. The crowd tightened. The bank's representative stepped closer with his clipboard. The reserve price was not spoken loudly, but everyone who mattered seemed to know it. $187,500, that was the line. Below it, the bank kept control. Above it, someone else could own the farm. The bidding opened fast. A neighboring operator took the first serious number. A land buyer from Grand Island answered without changing expression. Another man joined in, then dropped out almost immediately. The price moved in hard jumps. Men who had laughed over coffee stopped laughing. At $150,000, most neighbors were already finished. At $170,000, the land buyer and the big operator were the only 2 voices left. Then Clara raised her hand. At first, the auctioneer almost missed her. A woman near the front turned around, then another. A murmur passed through the crowd, low and confused. Someone said she must be bidding for her father. But Clara's father was standing 10 yards away, staring at his daughter like he had never seen her before. The auctioneer pointed at her. The number rose. The big operator answered, Clara answered back. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just one hand, rising from the sleeve of a faded chore coat. The land buyer quit first. He looked down at his figures and decided the farm was no longer clean enough for his spreadsheet. That left Clara and the large operator. The crowd shifted around them, but Clara did not look left or right. She looked at the auctioneer. The price crept within one bid of the reserve. Everyone understood what that meant. If the next raise came, the bank's safety line would be crossed. If it did not, the farm might still fall back into institutional hands. The auctioneer called the number. Wind moved through the cottonwoods. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then Clara lifted her hand again. Her bid cleared the reserve. The older operator looked at her, looked at the bank man, and shook his head. The auctioneer waited once. Twice. Then the gavel came down. The Whitcomb farm had sold. To Clara Jensen, 18 years old, 2 miles east. A girl most of the crowd had ignored that morning. There was no cheering. That was the strange part. The crowd went quiet in the way people go quiet when a room has changed and nobody knows what to say first. Ray Whitcomb stood perfectly still. Elsie covered her mouth with one hand. The bank representative bent over his clipboard, suddenly very interested in paperwork. Clara folded the envelope back against her coat and stepped down from the edge of the crowd. What nobody understood yet was that buying the farm was only the first half of her plan. Clara had not bought the Whitcomb place to put her name on another family's ground. She had bought time. Within days, Ray and Elsie learned the terms. Clara would lease the land back to them at a rate they could actually survive. Not a market squeeze, not a punishment. Enough to cover her note, taxes, and risk, and if they made the payments and rebuilt their footing, they would have the right to buy the place back for what Clara had in it, not what a desperate market might one day allow her to demand. Elsie cried when she saw the agreement. Ray read the first page twice, then stopped because his eyes would not stay clear. He tried to thank Clara, but all that came out was her name. Clara. That was enough. The story moved through the county faster than weather. At the co-op, they called it the day a girl outbid the bank. At church, people lowered their voices when they told it, as if speaking too loudly might make it less true. Some said Clara had been foolish, some said she had been brave. The older farmers understood it was more complicated than either word. She had taken a risk most grown men would have walked away from, but it was not a blind risk. It was 6 years of calf checks. 6 years of saving what other teenagers would have spent, 6 years of learning that small numbers, kept long enough, can become a lever. And she had aimed that lever at the exact moment a family needed someone to move the weight. The Whitcombs did not recover all at once, no farm did in those years. There were dry spells. Low prices. Repair bills that seemed to arrive in pairs. There were winters when the lease payment looked too large, and the corn check looked too small. But the land kept working. The creek bottom fields still flooded sometimes. The old cottonwood still broke the wind. Ray still cursed the pivot when it jammed, and Elsie still kept the kitchen light on during harvest, waiting for the sound of a pickup in the lane. Year by year, the debt shrank. Harvest by harvest, the impossible day at the auction became less like a miracle and more like what it really was. A system. Patience, discipline. Trust written into legal paper, then proven in dirt. By the time the deed returned to the Whitcombs in the early 1990s, 9 growing seasons had passed. 9 springs of planting. 9 falls of grain trucks. 9 years of a farm producing its way back from the edge. That was the part Clara never liked to talk about. She did not see herself as a hero, she saw a neighbor in trouble, a bank with a line on a page, and a way to keep that line from becoming the final word. The 1980s farm crisis left marks all across rural America. It emptied houses, it split families. It taught an entire generation that land values can rise like a promise, and fall like a trap. But it also revealed something the balance sheets missed. A farm is not only what someone will pay for it on one bad afternoon, it is the work already buried there. The hands that know where the soil changes, the family that can name every low spot, every broken tile, every tree planted by someone long gone. The bank counted the Whitcomb place as collateral. Clara counted it as a living thing, and on the coldest day that family could remember, an 18-year-old girl with mud on her boots raised her hand high enough to stop a farm from vanishing. The hammer fell. But the land stayed.